Today, I'm launching the series by exploring the strength of vulnerability, strength in vulnerability. It is the notion that as we are our most vulnerable, truest self, we actually are stronger, not weaker. And looking at how we have been taught to build up our defenses and hide behind walls. And so how do we be that kind of strength? Well, I found a cute little joke that just made me giggle, so I'm going to share it to start us off today. It's about a German Shepherd, a Doberman, and a cat all pass away at the same time, and they find their place in heaven, and God is sitting there on a throne waiting for them. And as they approach, God welcomes them and says to the German Shepherd, you're all going and coming in, but tell me, what do you believe in? And the German Shepherd says, well, I believe in love and caring for everyone. And God says, wonderful. German Shepherd, you may be seated here on my right. And he says to the Doberman, what do you believe in? And the Doberman says, well, I believe in loyalty and really protecting those who I love. And God says, that's wonderful. You may sit on my left. And he says, cat, what do you believe in? The cat says, I believe you are in my chair. Right? Those of us who have cats, we get it, right? You know that's what a cat would say to God. Get out of my chair. That's my chair. I thought that was just like depicting strength when you're in front of the creator of the universe and you're claiming the chair, right? You're owning it. And it's about, I think, owning who we are at the deepest level and claiming it for ourselves and being it. And I think that this topic is really probably very perfect for me because, in all honesty, as I've shared here many times, the way that I was raised, my family of origin, my childhood, taught me right away that it was dangerous to be who I was. It was literally physically dangerous, that if I wasn't being what one of my parents needed and wanted me to be, that I was not only in trouble, not only shamed or encouraged to be different, but literally threatened with violence if I didn't be the way that he wanted me to be. And so my first lessons came in life showing me you can't be who you are because you could get in trouble. I'm sure I'm the only one in the room who ever had that kind of experience, right? But what it caused me to do was to grow up seeking safety, seeking an ability to say, I want to be as safe as possible. So let me do my best to ascertain what you might need from me right now so that I can be it. And not only that, but let me always assure myself that I am the most perfect version of me in front of everyone, that I'm always cute and charming and happy and easygoing, and I am not always feeling cute and happy and easygoing, to tell you the truth, but I learned that I had to do that, and it became a habit. And what I discovered is that by taking on that habit, I built walls to fortify my sense of safety, and I put who I was in front of people on this wall. I am this person, and it wasn't the real me, and people fell in love with the wall. Oh, I love the wall. But here I am hiding behind the wall, scared, vulnerable because I really want to be who I am, and not really feeling very loved. Oh, people love the wall, but they don't love me. In order for me to feel real love and to be really loved, I got to come out from behind the wall. That's the only way. But I had all these reasons to stay behind the wall, to hide behind the wall. And so it was coming into this church. It was doing workshops and classes and personal growth work. It was therapy. It was having relationships time and time again where I discovered that someone would fall in love with the wall and then I would show up as my real self and get rejected because that was what I was afraid of. If you knew the real me, you won't love me, you won't like me, You might reject me. You might disagree with me. You might not approve of me, and that's just too painful. I can't handle it. And not only is it too painful, it's dangerous. So I hid really well. But when I discovered that I was doing it and I began to dismantle the wall, I slowly but surely began to be strong in who I was and to be willing to be more vulnerable. And it wasn't always easy. I had times where I failed and didn't do it very well. There's a particular time back in, I think it was 1993. I was brand new in my ministry. I entered ministry in 1991. Dr. Roger Teal was the senior minister at the Huntington Beach Church of Religious Science at that time. And when I graduated from the School of Ministry here, he invited me to go be a minister on his team in Huntington Beach. So I went, and I was an assistant minister, and I looked very young and was very young. And Roger, after a couple of years, promptly hightailed it back here to Denver. He came to serve this church. And so there I was, and the board of trustees felt like they had this inexperienced kid left. There were a few other ministers there, but we were without a lead minister at Huntington Beach. And so they were reaching out, trying to get everybody they could to come and speak. And I was speaking regularly there on Sunday nights, but none of the board members ever came to that service, and they had very little confidence in me. And one week, when they were desperate for a speaker, they finally came to me and they were like, "Okay, I guess we'll let you speak." And I said, okay. And it was Mother's Day. And so I prepared this Mother's Day talk to honor and celebrate Mother's Day. But I don't know if you all remember, back at that time, the vice president of our country was Mr. Dan Quayle. And Vice President Quayle was on a tirade at the time about Murphy Brown. Remember Murphy Brown, that series? She was a single mother, and Mr. Quayle was touting very loudly how inappropriate this series was, because after all, the only true way that a child can grow up and be happy in our culture is if they are raised with a cisgender male and a cisgender female who stay together and stay in marriage so that that child might thrive. And I thought that was hogwash. I thought that was inappropriate. I thought that wasn't my life experience at all. Still feel the same way, quite frankly. I disagreed with our vice president. And so here I am giving this talk about Mother's Day, and I say that I disagree with our vice president. I wasn't rude about it, but I mention it and go on with my talk, and it's all fine. And I go the next week, and all of a sudden, in my mail at the office comes this big, long complaint letter. Apparently, a big fan of Dan Quayle's was in church that Sunday and wanted to educate me as to Dan Quayle's true platform around family values, and wrote like a 3-page letter. And I get it, I got it. I was like, okay, that's fine. But then I look at the bottom of the letter, and he has copied every board member. And I got a little nervous. Now, this was in ancient times, for some of you young folks, before email, right? There was no email. So there were actual letters that had arrived at the office, and we had a folder system where all the board members had their mail that arrived and information we were giving them in the folders. So I sat there for a while pondering what I should do. And I promptly ran downstairs and I grabbed every letter out of the folders. And I grabbed them and I went back to my office and I shoved them in my desk, and then I sat there. And I felt a slight relief, because I thought, they'll never know. They'll never know. But then I started feeling a little guilty, like, all this gosh darn spiritual work I'm doing on myself to be authentic. And I battled for a while, and I sweat a lot, and I shook a lot, and finally I took a deep breath, and that inner voice that's behind the wall, it won, and it said, you know what, just face the music. This is what happens when you get out there on the edges and you have the courage to speak your mind. And I went down and I put every letter back in the folders, and then I waited. And I waited. And I waited. And the next Sunday, I saw the board president at church. And I said to her, I bet you got that letter from the Dan Quayle guy, didn't you? And she's like, yeah. She was really cool about it. And she said, look, Dan Quayle is a public figure. You don't agree with his platform. That's fine. You have a right to say you don't agree with his platform. And church went on. Oh, and life went on. Ministry went on. And they let me speak again, too, which was awesome. It was no big deal. They're like, yeah, thank you. Oh, phew. This thing that I thought was going to be this big deal, that I'd made this big deal, turned out not to be. But it was one of the major times that I was tempted to hide behind a mistake, an error, a failure, something, a misstep, that I wanted to erase it and keep it out of everyone's eyes. And I learned from that. And then later on, as I went on to serve at New Vision Center in Arizona, where our theme was all about being our authentic self, and even me showing up as a spiritual leader and being willing to share times when I was struggling with ministry or in my own life, and learning so clearly, discovering to my shock and amazement that if I put the pretend me up, it was sort of like, if I put the real me up, love. Love. Love that was generated in my direction, love that I could feel and take in, love that was healing. And I learned the only true position of strength in life is to be our real self. And to be our real self requires vulnerability. Years ago, I think Dr. Roger quoted it for the first time for me, a very important piece of the story from Velveteen Rabbit by Marjorie Williams, where they're all stuffed animals talking to each other. And one of the characters says, you become. It takes a long time. That's why it doesn't often happen to people who break easily or have sharp edges or who have to be carefully kept. Generally, by the time you are real, most of your hair has been loved off and your eyes drop out and you get loose in your joints and very shabby. But these things don't matter at all, because once you are real, you can't be ugly except to people who don't understand. That's the gist of this message today. Once you are real, you can't be ugly except to people who don't understand. So this is an invitation to invite us into being real, authentic, being vulnerable, because our hiding behind our walls, it's not serving us. It's just not. It's not allowing us to be the full measure of who and what we are. My favorite teacher who teaches about this is the great Brené Brown, who talks so beautifully about vulnerability, because what she distinguishes is that we hide often because we have shame. We've either felt shamed or been shamed for who we are, who we love, how we want to live, how we want to be, what's going on. We've been shamed, and so that hurts. That does hurt. And so our strategy to meet that pain is to hide who we are, to say, I don't ever want to feel that again, so I'm going to just hide behind this wall. But she says that will never serve us. In fact, she says, if you trade your authenticity for safety, you may experience the following: anxiety, depression, eating disorders, addiction, rage, blame, resentment, and inexplicable grief. These are things that are plaguing our world right now, with all the issues that we're facing, with the divisiveness and the energy that we're facing. It's an invitation to be willing to be who we are, to seek out our authentic self and be that and express that. And it is not always easy. It requires transparency. Now, what I like about what Brené says is that transparency doesn't look like I just run around blurting out who I am to everyone who'll hear it. Yeah, well, I hate that, and I don't like that, and I never want that again, and blah, blah. That's not what we're talking about. That's not the authentic life. Here's what we're talking about. We're talking about in these places where our heart is connected in our life, these relationships and conditions and situations where we can say, I'm hiding. I'm hiding because I'm ashamed. I'm hiding because I'm afraid. I'm not having the difficult conversation that I need to have. I'm not speaking my truth. It might be in a romantic relationship, in a family situation. It might be in a work situation. It might be in just some direction or decision that we crave for our life to go, and we just haven't had the courage to be transparent about it with people around us. It also might be about sharing with other people that I'm having a hard time right now. It could be that simple. And we, in this beautiful New Thought movement, sometimes misunderstand and think to really be practicing what we teach, we must always be positive, always have a happy thought, always put our best foot forward. And so this teaching in and of itself can appear to say, you hide behind the wall, you never let people know you're struggling. But that's not why we come here, is it? We don't come to church to be some perfect automatrons who always look great. We come here to love each other. We come here to support each other. We come here to see each other. We come here to lift each other up. And we can't feel that unless we let other people know what's happening for us in a realistic way. To stand before a practitioner and say, I'm really having a hard time with my relationship with my kid. And invite a prayer. To get support in a class by talking through an issue and really sharing with a prayer partner or a fellow student. Boy, I'm really scared about my finances. This is why we come here, to speak that authentic word, because in and of itself, it releases an energy that then allows us to be available for transformation. It's not to come here to hide. And I would actually suggest your life, my life, it's not to come here to hide. We did not go through all we've gone to be born and to live this life just to hide and pretend and be safe and look perfect. That is not why we came here. We came here to be. And the love that we yearn for and we crave and we need and we deserve can only happen when we dismantle those walls. And we show up just as we are. Just as we are. I always talk about people who date, and if they ask my advice, I always say, just put yourself out for what you really are. Because dating is this thing where you sit down and you put your best foot forward, and maybe you never dress up, but you dress up for the date. I got to dress up, but it's not who I really am. I'm stunned when I work with couples who come and say, I'll ask them things about what their plans are, and one of them wants 5 children and one of them doesn't want children, and they've never talked about that before. Okay, you're going to get married. Okay. You got to put who you are forth, because when you do that, whether it's dating or a job or some friendship, the people who are in resonance with you will show up. If you put the fake you forward, you'll get what you don't want. And so it's important to be authentic and be transparent. Now it's interesting, I'm so excited that we get to have Kute Blackson come and speak with us in April. On April 26th, we still have plenty of tickets, so we encourage you to come. And we've all been reading his book, The Magic of Surrender. Many of us have gotten the book and we've been reading it. And one of our members of our marketing team, one of our staff members who leads our graphic efforts, Lindsay Portancaso, pointed out this process on page 70 of Kute's book that is about it's called the truth process. As you leave today, there'll be a paper available for you to take home with you that has these questions on it and has information about Kute who's coming, but you can use these questions this week to support you in dismantling the wall. So here are the questions. It's a laser tool to drill down to the essence of what you really feel. Now, before I share the questions, I do want to say that prior to Kute sharing these questions, he'd been talking about working with a man who'd been married for many years, and he and his wife had decided that their marriage was definitely over, but they were living as a married couple for the sake of the children. And not that that's good or bad or wrong or right, but they were both very unhappy. And the man was extremely unhappy, feeling as though he was setting his life aside. And Kut was using these questions to just challenge him to really think about if this needed to continue to be his choice or not. So here were the questions, or are the questions. What lies am I telling myself? What lies am I telling myself? So the lie that I told myself when I hid those letters was that if I made a mistake, I would never be allowed to speak again. If I made a mistake, if I embarrassed the church, that the board would fire me. I told myself all sorts of things that turned out to be lies. Now, I didn't know it at the time. I convinced myself that I believed in the truth. But that's the point, isn't it? Most of our lies are actually assumptions we're making. If I really told you the truth about what I'm thinking, I know you wouldn't approve. No, you don't. That might be a lie you're telling yourself. The second one is, what am I pretending not to know? What am I pretending not to know? I was pretending not to know that we're adults. I was pretending not to know that mistakes can be made. What are we pretending not to know? The third question is, what is the payoff for staying stuck? Ooh, take a deep breath on that one, right? We might think, there's no payoff. I don't want to be stuck. I don't really want to be stuck in this situation. I don't like it. Yeah, that might be your conscious mind that says, don't you just love a dress with pockets? I just have to say. Take your hands out of your pocket, Michelle. Okay. What is the payoff for staying stuck? A lot of times the payoff is the comfort zone, right? Sometimes we love the comfort zone. It's all comfy and cozy and warm in here, and I don't like it at all, but I know the terrain. And so staying stuck means staying safe. But stepping out might represent a risk. And so what's the payoff? Looking at that. Number 4, what has the lie been costing me? That's a big question. What I've discovered in my life is that the lie always costs me. It always costs me my authentic self. It always costs me aliveness, because the opposite of all those qualities that Brené suggested, depression, anxiety, all those things, is total aliveness when I am who I am. I might not get everyone's approval. I might be rejected, but at least I'm being me. At least I am embracing and expressing the fullness of who I am. And that means more than anything. What am I afraid might happen if I tell the truth? Again, back to comfort zones. Things might change. Someone might have a different opinion about me. A lot of things. But what am I afraid might happen if I tell the truth? And then lastly, what right action can I take today? If there's a part of me who's been dreaming of moving to New Zealand, maybe my right action is that I research. What is it that people do for a living? What's the cost of living in New Zealand? I just do a little something that's right action that lets a part of me know that I'm at least willing to consider what I've been thinking about. What is it in people in that part who do that career? How do they do it? Or go talk to someone who does what it is you'd love to do. Go talk to someone who's in a happy relationship and hear what works for them. There's all sorts of little right action steps that we can take every day that can help us communicate to our deepest self that we're taking little risks every single day. Because what this does is it restores our aliveness. There seems to be a foot here. It's a game, but it's a very serious game that we all came here. See, when you were made into beingness, the infinite light and life merged with the specific genetic makeup of your parents and created you and me and everyone else, this unique expression of godlyhood. And it created that so that which we are, at what I call our original godly setting, could express itself in this world. And then our systems here on earth, whether it's family or culture or experiences or decisions we made or pain we experience, have caused us to often lose touch with that original godly setting. And every time, my sense is every time we take down a brick of that wall, that original godly setting has its expression in the world. And what was originally intended to occur upon your birth and my birth is launched into the earth. And we find our way, and we find our people, and we find our expressions, and we find our careers, and we find our dreams, and we find our desires. But I am 100% sure that if we stay hidden behind that wall, we will not find what we are looking for. And we will convince ourselves that who we are isn't enough, that we don't belong here, that this world just can't handle us, when all the while, that's not the truth. This week, go forth, use these questions to take down that wall. Be strong, be vulnerable, be willing. And I'd like to close with one last quote from the great Brené Brown. She says, "Stop walking through the world looking for confirmation that you don't belong. You will always find it because you've made that your mission. Stop scouring people's faces for evidence that you're not enough. You will always find it because you've made that your goal. True belonging and self-worth are not goods. We don't negotiate their value with the world. The truth about who we are lives in our hearts. Our call to courage is to protect our wild heart against constant evaluation, especially our own. No one belongs here more than you." Here's the thing, if you're here, you belong here. Let us have you in all your wild glory. Please join me as we pray together. Thank you. I invite our practitioner prayer partners to join me if they would like and stand for this prayer, because we stand together recognizing the one glorious life that expresses in, through, and as all of creation is God, is source, is the infinite presence, the very life itself that animates everything. And we celebrate it in all of its glory and indeed in all of its diversity. As we stand before a field of wildflowers, isn't one of the things we love best how beautiful each one is, how uniquely expressed it is, how the beauty of all the different expressions and colors and heights and widths of that wildflower field make it just an amazing thing to behold. I feel that joy in my heart and in my soul. I can see the field before me, and I allow my awareness now to turn towards all humans everywhere, and to include myself, my own image in the mirror, as I recognize that humanity is a beautiful field of wildflowers. And God is inherent in every flower, expressing fully and completely in, through, and as each expression. And I see the beauty of it all, and most especially this week, I affirm and accept that each of us sees the beauty of our authentic self, that we can find the strength as we go forth from this place this day to step more fully into the transparency of the true nature of our life, of our desires, of our heart, that we can and do have conversations and share who we are with the world, that we take ever more each day greater steps towards being who we truly are. For this we were born. For this we have come to earth. And I accept and affirm that in that choice, always present, is the ever-present energy of the divine. That is our strength. That is where we can draw courage. And we do that as we pray, as we meditate, as we make these choices, as we have the courage to stand fully in our life. In our life. And I'm so grateful that this is who and what we are now. So grateful for the authentic expression of all beings everywhere. So grateful that this is true. For I know that all good is expressed through this. And I just give thanks as I release this prayer now into the action of that universal law. I let go, I let it be, and so it is.